Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trylko from the Sons of UCF, joined by Eric Lopez of the Black and Gold Banneret. Welcome to Around the Kingdom. Elo, hello.
Hello, Trace. Glad to see you're dry, unlike most of the state. Coming up on the fastest UCF show around and the driest UCF show around. We'll talk biggest questions for UCF this year. They just had their media day, what stood out, and they had their first scrimmage, big-time analysis of the opening scrimmage. You'll find it nowhere else other than right here around the kingdom.
Before we get going with all of that, let us welcome in the third member of our team. He is Adam Eaton from the Sons of UCF. Keeps an eye on the clock, keeps us on our toes. Adam, hello.
Greetings, gents. I'm going to try and pay attention. I found out today there's something called the men's steeplechase race in the Olympics, and I am hooked. So I'll try to keep my eyes on the clock for both of you.
Maybe you'll explain that to us a little bit later. Elo, you mentioned it, media day a few days ago, but a scrimmage, the first of preseason camp Sunday. We got a recap from Gus Malzahn. What did you take from it? No members of the media, public, as best we can tell, could view the scrimmage. But from what you heard during the availabilities, what's your big takeaways?
Well, sloppy football. Penalties, Trace, right? That was the big issue last year. Gus has talked about they're going to want to work on that. He said it was on him. And what was it? 18 penalties, 13 on the defensive side, which I found fascinating in that regard. And, Gus has said, hey, we're going to work on that. That's on us. It's a different Gus this year than last year. He's taken everything personally across the board. But to me, that's what stood out is the penalties just and about 123 plays. I wonder with the new scheme defensively where they're trying to be more aggressive. That's the message as we'll get to throughout the show. The defense more aggressive. Does more aggression mean lean towards more penalties?
Could you live with that if that's the case, in contrast to what Gus Malzahn is saying about not beating yourselves?
Apparently not Gus. He wasn't happy with it. And it was interesting. The comment he said in the post-game scrimmage talked about how last year, and tell me if I'm misquoting him here, Trace. He called it like we're much more aggressive this year. Last year, we were as soft as butter defensively. Yo, when have you ever heard a coach just kind of keep cut like just? He is really still ticked off about last year, and he's trying to set the tone. And I think that's the tone he's trying to set to this team is let's play with an edge here and try to create this edge, this kind of nastiness, this kind of chip on the shoulder. Whether it works or not, we'll see. But I think that's clearly what he wants to see from his football team.
Well, I would just say this, that he said, we're not going to work out our growing pains on the field during games. We're going to work them out on the practice field. So he is much more focused. But we've been talking about this for more than a year now, right? It's a game of margins, and there are a lot of margins that UCF was on the wrong side of in these close contests in the Big 12, and penalties could come back to bite them. We'll see if they are more disciplined when the regular season gets underway.
Clearly wants to be a physical football team, unlike last year. I don't think he thinks he was more finesse last year than they should have been. And again, he's taking the blame for it, and that's why he's more in charge. And that was some of the tones that we heard, Trace, in media day on Thursday. The tradition unlike any other, UCF Football Media Day, where we get to talk to not just Coach Gus, but to all the coaching staffs and a ton of players. Fantastic media day. I think it was over 3 hours. I think we ended up getting 20, 30 players. Trace, what was your big takeaway from the media day?
Well, let's start with Gus. More of that he established during his first media availability earlier in the week on Monday, taking accountability. And we've talked about this, right? That it was an area that we were annoyed with Josh Heupel when he was head coach at UCF, that he didn't seem to take that accountability. You can't say Gus hasn't done that, but I will say he kind of owns all this now, right? This is his fourth season with the Knights. These are his recruiting classes. These are his transfer portal players. He's made changes to the coordinators. I'm not saying he's pointing fingers and blaming, but he said this team is going to reflect my personality, not the personality of coordinators, right? He's been very definitive about all of that. My big takeaway is this is his team. He's accountable for it. The buck stops with him. He's made it very clear that that's the case. So no one to blame if things don't go as he is projecting this coming season.
Isn't that refreshing, though? Because a lot of coaches wouldn't do that. A lot of coaches would deflect it. We've had coaches here in the past that deflect stuff. Let's give him credit for that. He's not hiding from it. My takeaway is that the players seem to have bought into Ted Roof on the defensive side. I talked to Ted Roof. It's clear they want more aggression. blitzing, more physicality. And it seems like the players have bought into that and talking to them on the defensive side of the ball. And I think the offensive side of the ball, they're kind of connected there with KJ Jefferson, at least from talking to the offensive style players there and their philosophy and the running game. And I think everybody knows that this team is going to set the tone with their running game and those running backs.
There is one way to certainly look back at that season, the first in the Big 12. At 6-6, that was a pretty good transition from the American. There were some games that got away, but to a player, they said they weren't pleased with that. That was not satisfactory. So that's a message that Gus Malzahn has been saying as well. It is the talking season, right? We've got a couple more weeks of that, hearing what everybody wants to say at this time of year. But you get the sense that they feel they let some things get away. They have more to prove. We'll see if they put those pieces together when the season begins.
And it's almost like a reboot in that, I asked Gus, does it feel in a way that this is year one of a new Big 12, considering all the new members in the league, the fact they're only playing, I think, 2 opponents in the Big 12 that they played last year, and Gus kind of acknowledged, it does feel a little bit new. So it's almost like a fresh start. New, think of it as a mulligan. If you're a golf fan, think of it as a mulligan perhaps last year, and now go for it all with all the home games. Really, the top teams in the Big 12, you have them at home for the most part. Maybe that's the message, but can they back it up? We'll find out once they get on the field in September.
Feisty
another opponent.
Gus, Elo.
I like it.
Gus. That's what we have.
Hey, listen, isn't that what we want as the media and fans? Is that honesty? I mean, we never got this from a Josh Heupel. Never got this from George. George was quick to throw players under the bus left and right, Trace. Heck, George would blame you if you were in the room.
I'm sure he would. All right. 1 week of practice, 1 scrimmage. You had media day. Who's some stock you're buying here? Who are some players? What's a nameable player that you've come away with a little bit better feeling about based on what you've heard in the early going?
Xavier Townsend. I believe not to give away our season preview stuff, but I think Xavier Townsend has a great chance to be the best football player on this team offensively. Better than R.J. Harvey by the end of the year if he continues to develop. I think he's their playmaker at wideout. Gus Malzahn talked about he made this incredible play in a scrimmage that nobody gets to see. But I talked to Xavier Townsend. I sense more confidence in him than a year ago. I think he learned a lot. He's working on his game. I think Xavier Townsend is a guy I'm starting to get more bullish on the offensive side of the ball.
I'm buying into some hype, not quite the hopium, but I heard 2 names this week from multiple people, right? It was players. It was also Addison Williams talking about cornerback Antoine Jackson, the ECU transfer. So we heard his name a couple of times. And then who came up big offensively in that scrimmage? Ohio transfer wide receiver Jacoby Jones with 2 touchdown catches. So we've been talking about who's going to emerge as that third receiver. Of course, there's always some receiver we latch on to during preseason camp that only catches a couple of balls. I don't know if that'll be Jacoby or not, but in the early going, I like what I hear about him.
Well, I think we can agree on this. For them to have success this year, they need the transfer players to have an impact. I mean, my goodness, it's the majority of the roster. Basically, it feels that way anyway.
All of the captains.
Correct. So they have to hit on this transfer class because, Trace, I would argue that they didn't hit last year in their transfer class. They have to hit a high batting average this year to have the success that they want to have internally. So you better be hearing about some of these transfer guys stepping up and making immediate impacts, like you mentioned with Jones, as an example.
That's going to be interesting to follow is the impact of transfers, that batting average, right? Is it quantity of players? Is it the quality? Is it where the impact is made? For example, linebacker, you know that they've got to hit on those.
No doubt. And, of course, a key area of the game that never gets talked about but decides games is special teams, Trace. In fact, it was interesting. Not a lot of chatter about special teams, at least on media day. I know there were some questions there about the scrimmage, Trace, but I think there's still a lot of questions here on the special teams. It's kind of the under the radar here that nobody talks about it. Am I right that there's a lot of questions we got here?
I think there are questions. I do think it's interesting that at media day, there was no Colton Boomer. Remember, he spoke to the media during the spring camp. He was not part of media day festivities. He was a year ago. I spoke with special teams coordinator Brian Blackman about Colton, and I phrased it this way, and it's a position that I have. He's going to miss a kick. I'm not worried about a kick that he misses. It's what happens when he comes out for that next kick. Does he make that next kick? Because if he misses that next kick, I think there's going to be some nervousness. Also, Gus was asked at one of his availabilities this week about maybe a kickoff specialist. There was taxing on Colton Boomer last year, and he may not have been 100% kicking off and the field goals, the extra points. So that'll be something to watch for as well. But I do think it is an area of concern. Win all three phases of the game. If you're UCF, that is not always the case because you have some questions in special teams.
What about just getting a punt return and kick return to get a score? Remember Mike Hughes, right? The late great Otis Anderson.
It's getting farther and farther away since we've seen one.
They have not been a factor in the return game. Our beloved Adam Eaton had a great stat. It's out they were near the bottom in net yardage and punts. Like, that's field position. And when you're going to play in a bunch of close games, field position and special teams a lot of times could decide a lot of those factors, whether it's a missed kick like you're talking about. It could be as simple as the other team maybe blocking a kick or returning a kick or field position. Where is that for UCF? In a league like the Big 12, I think those – you've talked about in the spring about softball and the game of margins. I would argue special teams is the exact definition of game of margins that you're talking about that can make the difference in a couple of games here and there.
Potent offense, a better defense. You're still going to need that third phase of the game, right, to get over the hump, especially on road games, which transitions us to games 7, 8, and 9. And the confidence factor you have, Elo, these three games are marked by 2 home games, but this begins with at Iowa State. What's your confidence factor in this one? You've been pretty confident thus far. You're the guy that's behind KJ Jefferson for Heisman. You're the guy that thinks this is a 9-10 win team. So you got to think there's some road wins in that if you got them winning 9 games or more.
Well, I had them winning at TCU for the record. Iowa State's a toss-up. It's 50-50. It's a tough place to play from what everybody says there. Good teams have gone there and lost. We don't know what the weather is like there. I don't even think UCF's never played there. Matt Campbell's a very good coach, although it's interesting. Iowa State has a very bad – I think they're like 3-13 in close games over the last few years in the Big 12. I think
UCF has strong under Campbell.
But part of that is because a lot of times they're the underdog. They don't have the talent that teams that they play against, like the Oklahomas and the Texas and the UCF. So I'm going to say 50-50 on that game because I that's a flip of a coin, and that game, Trace, is one of a couple of games that could easily have this season be 9-3 or 7-5 and 6-6.
Yeah, I think it's a jump ball. I told you that. I think most of these conference games, not Cincinnati, we're going to talk about BYU, but most of these conference games, I think, are, as Gus Malzahn spoke a year ago, one possession games, late in the fourth quarter games. UCF has to get a couple of these games to have the kind of season that they're talking about. This one would be one. I think they go in, though, as an underdog. I know it's a 50-50 game, but I think they go in as an underdog. They come back home to BYU. BYU is no easy out, but UCF should be favored at home against BYU.
I've got it at 59%. BYU.
How did you get to 59%, by the way? How are you?
I have my calculations. Listen, I take this very seriously. I prepare all week. There was this massive storm that all the local weather people were telling us, Trace. I was hunkered down like I was told to do and taking notes and thinking, man, I better be ready for this around the kingdom if we have electricity. Thankfully, we do. I will say 59%. BYU, though. Remember, they almost beat Oklahoma State in Stillwater last year in overtime, so we'll see how they do there. I got them at 59, but UCF.
No easy out. I think UCF wins that game, which brings us to space, Elo, in the space game. And Arizona, another team, no easy out. UCF has done well on the space game. Perfect record. Does that continue against Arizona at home?
I got UCF at 55% in that game because they're home, and it's fifth. And you mentioned it. Space game. We've never lost. Can't start now. I will say this. If Jed Fish was still the head coach at Arizona, they would be my pick to win the Big 12. Can anybody name the head coach at Arizona right now? I'm going to give you all, everybody listening and watching right now, I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. Adam's going to give you the answer here momentarily. Who is the Arizona head coach? That should be the trivia question. I think if you asked, I think less than 20% know who the heck the head coach is. I sometimes forget myself, and I cover this.
I think UCF will be favored.
Do you know, Trace?
I know, but I don't want to give it away to the audience.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I saw him in Las Vegas at Big 12 Media Days. You mentioned Adam. Let's bring him back in time for our silly game. I really think the whole show is just a bunch of silliness, but nonetheless, we do have a segment called the silly game.
That's fair. I can confirm Trace had no idea who the Arizona coach was either. But before we get to silly game, let's talk to you a little bit more about the Cure Bowl. Again, Friday, December 20th, the Staff DNA Cure Bowl will take place in beautiful downtown Orlando at Camping World Stadium. It'll be a fun-filled day of football and help raise funds and awareness for cancer research. It's consistently rated one of the top bowl games to watch each year. You won't want to miss out on any of the entertaining pregame festivities and exciting action on the field. At the Cure Bowl, the matchup is always Orlando versus cancer. So go ahead and join the home team now and get your tickets today. Go to curebowl.com if you want tickets. And again, if you want to become a scout, check out our son's YouTube page. Trace did a great interview that teaches you how to become a Bowl Scout, which seems like a really good gig for any of us. All right, gentlemen. Eric and I did not prepare notes in advance, but the game this week is actually an odds game. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a statement.
59%.
I want you to give me a percentage that you think this statement could come true. All right, so Elo, I will start with you. Here's the first one. You give me the percentage you think this statement will come true. The offensive line that starts the home opener against New Hampshire will start the first conference game. What percentage do you think that is true?
I'm going to say 47%. I think there's going to be a change or two. You got to tweak some things. You know, things evolve, injuries happen. I'm going to say 47%.
So 47% of this line is going to change, or what's your percentage there?
No, I'm just going to say I'm going to say yes, there will be a change. I will say it one change.
25% that the lineup that we see against New Hampshire is the same one in a couple of weeks. There'll be changes.
All right, Trace, for you. Odds that somebody other than Kobe Hudson leads UCF in receptions.
50% could be Xavier Townsend. I wouldn't expect it to be anybody else.
I should have said no 50%.
I will say, I'm going to go 51.5%. I think this could be a neck and neck race. Xavier Townsend versus Kobe Hudson. All the focus on Kobe. I think Townsend could be a big playmaker.
All right, next one. Odds that Miles Montgomery is the second leading rusher on UCF's team this upcoming season, Elo.
Wow. Is there enough footballs for that backfield, by the way? I don't know how that's going to happen. Second leading rusher, I will say 25% chance. Maybe there's an injury. He steps into that role. Maybe he gets hot. You know, if you follow Gus in his career, tends to ride the hot hand. Maybe he gets hot, gets there. I'm going to go 25% because, my goodness, there's 4 backs I can make an argument should get at least 10 touches. And I don't know. There's not enough footballs for that. That is the most fascinating. I cannot wait to see how they figure all that out this year.
Yeah, I think the key there is whether there is an injury that gives him more touches. So I'd say just 10% chance that he's the second leading rusher.
Gus did say he broke an 80-yard run in the scrimmage and was called back by a penalty, oddly enough. All right.
Shocking. 18 penalties.
All right. Using a popular game out there, this is going to be called Watch, Turn Off, or Go Away Forever. I'm going to name you 3 sporting events. You've got to have one you're going to watch, one you're going to turn off, and one that's going to go away forever. All right. Are you ready, Trace? Here are your 3 events.
I guess. Watch, turn off.
The Little League World Series, the NBA All-Star Game, or the NFL Pro Bowl. Which one do you want to watch? Goodness. Which one do you turn it off? Which one goes away forever?
Go away forever, NFL Pro Bowl. I'm not interested in seeing guys play flag football.
Okay.
Watch Little League World Series because I want to see some kid that looks 19 that's listed as 12 years old. And what was the other category?
Turn off the NBA All-Star Game.
Turn off. Yeah, I'm not interested in the NBA All-Star Game.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a step further. I say go away NBA All-Star Game. The WNBA, for crying out loud, showed that you could actually put up a nice product in an All-Star Game. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I did, Adam. I enjoyed the WNBA All-Star Game more than the NBA All-Star Game. So if we're not going to change the NBA All-Star Game and people care, then just just go away. I'm going to say turn off the Pro Bowl or scrimmage, whatever it's called. What is it even now? I don't even know. The only thing I am intrigued, though, it is in Orlando, so I hope it does well. And then what was the other category?
You're stuck with watching the Little League World Series, Elo.
I do. I actually don't mind it. I mean, and let's be specified. There's the baseball version and a softball version. So this is a big time of year, both here.
Good call. Enjoy.
Thank you.
All right. We'll check back with you in a bit, Adam. Elo.
All right, let's get some reckless speculation going here, people. Yeah. Of course, the quarterback room is constant discussion. I had a lengthy talk with Darren Hinshaw, the quarterback coach, about that. Look for that coming up on blackandgoldbanneret.com content. But Trace, in today's day and age, what are the odds that all these quarterbacks, well, we know KJ won't be back next year. He's only a one-year deal, but what about the rest of this roster of the quarterbacks? Are they going to be back a year from now? If somebody move on, I think that'll be interesting to see what this quarterback room looks like as we begin the over-under. And how many quarterbacks do we think will be on this roster a year from now?
All right, so the inspiration for this is George O'Leary, actually, when he said that he would write down the record that he thought the team would achieve, put it in an envelope, put it in his desk drawer, check back in after the season. So that's what I want us to do, Elo. Not going to reveal who on this list of quarterbacks. We know KJ, so that's your free space on the bingo board. Will not be back. Dylan Risk, who was not live in Sunday scrimmage. Ja'Cory Brown, the Miami transfer. EJ Colson, the freshman. Riley Trujillo, the freshman. And Brock Hansel, redshirt sophomore. I want you to play this at home as well, folks. We're going to look back on this a year from now. How many of these guys, Elo, just looking at that, there are guys that are not going to be suiting up for UCF in preseason camp next year. And I think Gus likes that transfer portal, likes what's behind door number 2 all of the time, and he'll be fishing for another quarterback. So there are guys on this list, in addition to KJ Jefferson, that will not be back. Write him down, Elo. We'll compare notes in a year.
And Larry, if you're a listener of the show, send them as well, Trace. I think we should let the audience also in on this. They could send it to us. We will write them down. Maybe have Adam have it on his envelope as well, and then we can unveil this on a post-show, post-season, maybe a year from now, like you said.
6 quarterbacks. How many are on the roster? How many leave? All right. Kind of easing back into prop bets. We did this a little bit last week with rushing and passing touchdowns and so forth. A little defense here, Elo. Stat line, sacks. Who leads the Knights in sacks this coming season and how many? I will remind you, Tremon Morris-Brash led the Knights with 8.5. This is supposedly going to be a more aggressive blitzing defense from Ted Roof. What's your prediction? Who and how many?
I'm going to go Malachi Lawrence, 7.5.
I have Malachi Lawrence. Malachi had 7.5 last year. I spoke with him at Media Day. He's predicting double digits for himself.
Whoa.
He's saying 10. I'm going 9. That's another thing. You can drop us a message on Sons of UCF and all the social channels. Who do you think?
Well, I didn't talk to him. You got an unfair advantage on me. You spoke to him. You've got inside information.
We both picked the same guy. You just went a little bit lower than I did. All right. That's for sacks, Elo. Next category.
Well, the next stat is who will lead the Knights in tackles for loss and how many? And this is a great point, right? This is one of the goals. I had a chance to talk to Ted Roof. Fine fellow, Trace. Talked about tackles for loss. Yeah, tackles for losses.
Congratulations, Elo.
I had a good time with him. I can't speak for anybody else, but I was good. I learned a lot. And want to mean tackles for losses with the aggression. Who leads the team at
Tremon Morris-Brash last year, your leader, 20.5. That was the number. Yeah. I'm going Lee Hunter. He had 11 last year. See increased production from him, 18. Shy of Tremon Morris-Brash, more for Lee Hunter. I think that'll be spread out a little bit more as well.
I got John Walker leading the way with 19.
19. So a little shy of Tremon Morris-Brash, but we're in the neighborhood. Yes. All right, Elo. Interceptions. Last year, the team high was 3, held by a couple of guys, Nakai Martinez, Corey Thornton, Damari Henderson, Damari Hurt. We're not quite sure when we will see him this coming season. Gus says that he will play, of course. Who's your leader in INTs and how many?
I'm going to go with Brandon Adams with 4 because I feel the most comfortable with him in the cornerback position. I talked to him at Media Day. He's worked on his game. He looks up to Jalen Ramsey. And I think he likes this new scheme with Ted Roof. I wonder if we see him kind of, if you watch Jalen Ramsey throughout his career at Florida State in the NFL, Jalen Ramsey, very good around the scrimmage, there, tends to blitz a lot. I wonder if Adams could be maybe that guy. We'll see. But I think Adams, maybe teams go after him a little bit more. He gets 4 interceptions to lead the team.
You know, you see these numbers last year, 3 being the lead. A lot of teams didn't have to pass on the Knights because they could just run through the Knights, right? So maybe he's going to get a little more action. I asked Addison Williams about him, said he's an NFL guy, going to play on Sundays of Brandon Adams. He's who I have. I have him at 5. You have him at 4. So we're close. You drop your comments on this YouTube video. Let us know. Tackles for loss, sacks, interceptions. Who do you have and how many, Elo? So that'll be something to watch this coming season.
Well, of course, when we talk about the secondary, that is one of the key questions that I have, Trace. I'm working on a preview on the secondary. And really, the question that I have for you, Trace, is which player in the UCF secondary that has left has you the most worried or leaves you with the biggest question mark in the secondary? I mentioned Brandon Adams, pretty much, I think he's going to be a safe starter. There's a lot of questions around that because of losses of Corey Thornton and then Nikai Martinez there. Which one of those two in their respective positions has you the most concern or question?
I'm not particularly concerned about the UCF secondary, though I don't think it was as challenged because of the rush defense last year, but I sure wish they had Corey Thornton back. I think they can live without Nikai Martinez based on his performance, but I wish they had Corey back. So he's who I would mention.
I think from a talent standpoint, I agree with you on Corey Thornton, but I do worry about the safety position on who is going to be the guy there and make the plays, be a ball hawk, right?
Ladarius Tennyson.
We hope that's the guy, right? That's the hope.
Ole Miss transfer.
That's the hope. But, you know, we had a guy there that was a Jim Thorpe finalist a few years ago, Trace. You recall Mr. Richie Grant in 2020 was a ball hawk. Do we have a ball hawk player in that secondary? That's how you create turnovers. Guys that know how to find the ball and create turnovers, be in the right position, maybe come blitz a little bit more under this new aggressive defense. That's why I think Martinez's position to me is more worrisome, even though I do agree with you about Tennyson. I kind of feel like the cornerbacks, they're going to figure that out. They're all going to get to play there alongside Adams.
So you know what you're hearing from Ted Roof, and you've heard it from Gus Malzahn about more aggressive defense. Do they have the talent? Do they have the players to support what Roof wants to do? That is going to be a big question.
They brought a lot of players in. They brought a lot of players in. I will say this. I don't know if you agree with this, Trace. Just seeing them on media day. They're definitely bigger, especially in the linebacker position, which is what they clearly targeted. But will it click? Will it work? Or they misfire? That's why, to me, the biggest question of the year on this football season success is this defense. Does it click? And they bring enough talent to be successful? We will see.
We will see. Time to bring back in Adam, who's got that answer for everybody playing the at-home game, who is Arizona's head coach.
Well, I'm going to get to that, Trace. Let's tease it so I can get to it later. You mentioned a lot of interviews, Trace. If you go to the Suns YouTube page, you can find a bunch of interviews on there. Some are already uploaded. Some will be loaded up here the next couple of weeks. Trace, Clay, Andrew did a great job getting interviews out there. So check out our YouTube page. You guys talked about biggest questions of special teams. I would posit 2. Block kicks, I think you said, Elo. I feel like every year we have an idiot block kick, and penalties. We've had a bunch of returns called back on penalties. So I think those are 2 things to think about. The long-awaited reveal, Arizona's head coach, is Brett Brennan, formerly of San Jose State, Trace. I know.
Who didn't know that?
I know you're big on that. We're talking.
Is he a guy that looks like Neil Brown, though?
He's a guy that looks like Willie Fritz, actually. You guys were talking about reckless QB speculation. Take this for what it's worth. But at FanFest, Dylan Risk was sitting next to KJ Jefferson. Ja'Carri Brown was at another table. So do with that what you will. You talked about stats. Here's a fun fact for you. Brandon Adams has 0 career interceptions at UCF. So his first interception will be his first interception. You guys talked about Corey Thorne. He's now at Louisville. Nikai Martinez, now Michigan State. More fun for you. You talked about Ladarius Tennyson being maybe that guy that plugs in. According to College Football Reference, he has 0 career interceptions and 0 career forced fumbles. So not exactly a turnover machine just yet in his career, but there's always a chance.
Just yet, though. One more thing, Elo, before we go. Bookies.com. I love being on their email list. They've ranked the best Big 12 destinations on factors that include location, tailgating, entertainment around the stadium, and family sentiment, which is defined as the safety for kids and their families. UCF coming in 6th in the Big 12. Kansas State tops the list. On the list for UCF's road destinations this year, the Knights travel to 5th-ranked West Virginia, 7th-ranked TCU, 10th-ranked Arizona State, and How intimidating is this? 15th in the league, Iowa State, Elo. They're saying that is the 15th best travel destination. I think UCF Mike is a part of the selection on this. Look for new episodes midweek, every week on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Drops later wherever you get your audio and downloadable content. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Eric Lopez. I'm Trylko. Thanks, everyone, for watching this week's Around the Kingdom.